Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. This summer, Wisden is proudly sponsored by Kia UK. Kia are leading the way in electrification with a groundbreaking range of EVs, including the EV9, EV6, and the UK Car of the Year, the EV3. Kia also have a commitment to movement that inspires and want to help cricket fans get closer to the action. Listen every week for Kia's Movement That Inspires moment for chances to win exciting experiences at the Kia Oval this summer. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. We're a day out from the first day of the first England-India test match at Headingley. We've got an England team. We've got some pretty good ideas over what the India side will look like as well. And we also have an interview with Gary Kirsten coming up later on in the show, a few days after South Africa obviously winning the WTC final here at Lord's. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today, Ben Gardner and the returning Phil Walker on for the first time in a while.
It's a real joy and a pleasure to be back, yes. I feel like I've been returned to my natural position at number 3. I'm the Ollie Pope of this podcast, without doubt. First 20 minutes is the key for me.
First up, Mark Butcher. Butch, we're a couple of days out from this potentially blockbuster series, England-India, 5 test matches in 6 weeks pretty much. Where do you think the series will be decided, or what do you think the key battles will be? Because there are more unknowns going into this particular series than previous England-India battles. In England, there's no Kohli and Rohit. For India and England are playing at home without Jimmy and Broad for the first time in pretty much 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up, I think. The one sort of series-breaking player is Bumrah on either side. You'd say that England's batting lineup with Smith coming in at 7, Wokes at 8, looks like it can take care of itself. Bumrah notwithstanding. The fact that he's only down to play 3 I mean, the whole 3 test matches thing. Yeah, like it's going to go down to the last 2 sets test matches with the whole thing on the line, and he's not going to play. It's just nonsense. But anyway, that's kind of how we are setting the whole thing up. And then, you know, England, in terms of bowling experience, is just so light. And you've got great weather coming up and you know, potentially good pitches. I mean, who knows what you get at Lord's, but everywhere else you've got potentially good pitches. You know, but India's batting is shorn of kind of a lot of runs in terms of Rohit and Kohli, runs and experience. KL Rahul looked great in the India A game against England, 150 in that. You've got Pant batting as high as 5, which will either be genius or, you know, a disaster for them. The potential of Karen Nair or Sudarshan at number 3. I'd probably be inclined to go with Nair, but they might like the left-hand option of Sudarshan. So they've got plenty of questions over their batting. We've got plenty of questions over our bowling.
Sorry, just on the inexperience of the batting, it's a bit of a trope that younger tourists struggle on their first tour of England. They struggle against the moving ball, the moving dukes. How much of a thing do you think that actually is? And what is it? What is it that sometimes you see overseas batters struggling most at on first tours?
What there may not be that the ball may not move. It kind of always makes me laugh to think about the Duke ball, right? Is that the ball moves around given conditions that help it, and that's the same for any cricket ball anywhere in the world. So we saw the World Test Championship, where for the first 2 days batting seemed particularly difficult, and then they were still using a Duke ball days, you know, on day 3 and day 4, and it did absolutely bugger all. You know, so given the right outward or physical conditions, pitch-wise and weather-wise, a Duke ball can do as little as a Kookaburra ball, as little as any other type of ball. I go back to, I can't remember what year it was now, but England against India, where KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma gave one of the sort of like an utter masterclass at playing against the moving ball at the Oval, I think it was.
Yeah, 2021,
conditions. And so there's no reason technically why the Indian batters should find it any more difficult in their first time round than in the other time round. It's just, you know, it's a big old series. And if you haven't played in England before, you can kind of get caught with your pants down a little bit early on. And then, given that it's a 5-match series, if a bowler gets your number, then it can be very difficult. And that goes for a series, whether it's your debut one or at any particular time. I mean, look at Kohli. Aside from the series in 2018 where he made nearly 600 runs, he found it difficult no matter how many times he'd been back. So look, there are all sorts of unknowns in both teams, and I think that's what makes it very exciting. I do think, without giving any sort of silly predictions or anything, I think that England's home advantage might just pull them through in the end. But I think it's going to be mighty close and a very good watch.
On England's inexperience, if it's flat in particular, do you potentially worry about their ability to keep things under control? Even though that India lineup is less experienced than previous touring India sides, full of stroke makers, full of guys who can take the game away from you. And that England side over the last year, even though they've had a reasonable amount of success, albeit not against the very top nations in Test cricket, they have been much more expensive than they have been in the era of Broad and Anderson.
Yeah, but I also think that Stokes doesn't really set much store in keeping control of the game, not in the way that previous captains might have done. He's quite happy to go at fives as long as there's a wicket falling every 10 overs or so. So I don't think that'll be an issue. I think more likely the issue is going to be for England is keeping a bowling attack, whatever it looks like, on the park. The thing I worry about is less England sort of being able to keep control of scoring rates or whatever. It's more if they are kept out there for a couple of days or a day and a half in some warm weather, which we're expecting at Leeds over the weekend, is how many of those bowlers are kind of hardened enough to be able to withstand it. And will Stokes find himself at some point during the series, not necessarily the first test, but at some point during the series, a bowler down, or scrambling to find four seamers to go along with the spinner, which is entirely possible, right? I don't think the fitness record of England's seam bowlers over the last 18 months or so gives you a great deal of hope that something bad might not happen at some point. So I mean that's another thing.
On India, where they fell short in Australia was that Bumrah had basically no support. Bumrah had one of the great individual series, 32 wickets at 13. No India bowler who played in more than one test match other than Bumrah averaged under 30. If you're looking at how they could have success against England, again, this is something maybe challenging tropes around what Test cricket is like in England. Could it be spin? Could it be Kuldeep Yadav, who you feel like against this England lineup in particular, who we know like to attack as their first port of call, really, he could be really lethal.
Yeah, I think looking at a potential sort of India starting 11, I think they're going to have three seamers, right? They're going to have Bumrah, Siraj, probably Prasidh Krishna as their sort of three main seam bowlers. Jadeja's baked in; he'll bat at 6 more than likely. So you've got an all-rounder in the top 6, same as England have. And then they've kind of got two spare spots. You have the option to play sort of Reddy or Shardul Thakur at 7, which gives you another seam bowling all-rounder option. And then you've got the spot at number 8, which could be filled either by Shardul if you decide to go Reddy at 7, Kuldeep or Washington Sundar. And again, I think looking at sort of weather forecasts and how dry it's been, that if you were India, given the luxury that you have, you might say that they're a top order batter like with Pant at 5 and Jadeja at 6, but that looks likely to be the way they go. Given the luxury of having Jadeja at 6, they could then decide to go with Kuldeep. However, under Gambia, they've been a little bit sort of reticent to leave the batting that short, that Washington Sundar then comes into it. Batting at 8 gives them excellent batter, left-hander, and another left-arm spin bowler, which kind of makes the attack a little bit samey. They are slightly different bowlers. But the temptation, I don't know, that in years gone by, perhaps prior to Gambia, they might have gone on the more attacking option. I wonder if they'll be a little bit safer in this iteration with a brand new captain and a lot of inexperience through the team.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the last time India played England, the last test match between the two sides, Kuldeep Yadav was player of the match. In the test match before that, he takes 4 for 22 off loads of overs. And if you go back to that 2024 tour, other than Hyderabad, the test that England won, it's pretty flat pitches, actually. They were more old school Indian pitches. And Kuldeep was able to have a lot of success without an enormous amount of assistance from the pitch. And you think if it's going to be relatively flat and the weather's going to be really good, do India need 4 seamers when the 4th seamer is unlikely to play a massive part in proceedings? And you've already got Jadeja. I know he's there as a spin option, but he's almost selected firstly for his batting, and especially given that India have much less batting experience they've had on previous tours. I mean, I think there was one test match in 2021 where Bumrah batted 5. So, Jadeja batted 5. So, I mean, they have. The thing is, the way that top 6 is lined up, they actually have the option to do something without it affecting the batting depth too much, but give them a real sort of wild card, cutting edge option in Kuldeep if they decide to play. I guess the one thing against that is that, leg spin or, wrist spin at Headingley hasn't been wildly successful. It was one of the venues that Warne struggled to make a real impact at. And so they might be put off in terms of the numbers over that. But I think looking at the way that they potentially will line up, I think that might be a very handy option to have in your bag. And just finally, how much are you looking forward to this?
A lot. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that I've been zapping around the country on T20 matches for about the last 3 weeks, and I'm quite looking forward to unpacking a bag and being at the same ground for at least let's say at least 3 days, but probably 4 and 5. But yeah, I think it's going to be great. There's a real sense, I think, of the unknown about what's going to happen in this series. There are lots and lots of questions about both squads, both potential lineups. Weather looks fabulous. That's another thing to look forward to. You're unlikely to get a couple of days washed out over the course of the weekend. And there are a lot of new players to look at, particularly for India. England's bowling lineup, there'll be sort of like a collective drawing of breath if England end up bowling first, and just to see how it goes, really, because you haven't got a clue. Woakes had a pretty good game in that India A game, but hasn't exactly been overburdened with work. Carse has appeared in the one-day series. Hung has been kind of a little bit hit and miss, not sort of wildly impressive in the build up to it. Bashir with a 5 at Zimbabwe, but again, who knows? And then you could end up with the spectre of Stokes having to carry a load of the bowling, which you really don't want, and putting himself in jeopardy for the rest of the series should things not go great with the others. So there are an enormous amount of questions to be asked, and the same as far as India are concerned in terms of their untested in English conditions top order. So it should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It will be fascinating to see how it all plays out. Cheers for your time, Butch. See you next week. For this episode's Kia Movement That Inspires moment, Kia are giving you the chance to win the best seats in the house for the Surrey Glamorgan T20 Blast game on July 11th at the Kia Oval. Win the opportunity for you and up to 5 friends to watch the match in an exclusive area right on the edge of the pitch. Enjoy a VIP experience, including food, drinks, and a tour of the Kia Oval. These really are the best seats in the house. And for your chance to win, all you need to do is enter via the link in the description. Phil, we were there the other day, and that's exactly what we were saying. Celebrating India's tour of England, the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast is also proudly sponsored with Remitly. We all cheer for every cover drive, every Yorker, every run saved, but every cheer from the stands or from our screens thousands of miles away is more than just support for the team. Every cheer is a cheer for home. What's the team we play for every single day? That's our family. No matter the distance, they're always with us in every moment of pride, joy, and connection. Maybe that's why millions of people choose Remitly to send money to India. With fast, safe, and affordable transfers and great exchange rates with low fees, more of the money that you send reaches the people who matter most. Because wherever we are, home is in every cheer. Before we get to you guys, a reminder that we've been really busy on the old Patreon. And I guess the main event for the Patreon in the summer are the dailies of the England-India test matches, which will be hitting your feeds within an hour or so of stumps each day in that series. So if you want to get dailies from the Wisden crew, head to the Patreon. It starts from £5 a month plus VAT. And we also have a weekly episode on the Blast, a weekly episode on the Championship when it's happening, and an extra weekly show each week as well. So this week, me and Rob Smythe from The Guardian are doing something on the historical WTC finals that never actually happened.
Oh, that's good.
So,
that's good.
Lots to get stuck into. But were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, the dailies were action-packed at the WTC final because the South Africa fans were having a good time every single day. And after they'd won it, we were almost feared for our safety. Kashi got hit in the head by a plastic cricket ball because they were playing on the nursery ground. They're playing some casual games.
What, mid-show?
Mid-show, we kept it in.
Yeah. I imagine she just wrote that one out, no bother. Didn't miss a beat.
She said, I should have caught it. Yeah.
Phil, you've been away for a bit, but you did crucially return to the UK just in time for the end of that WTC final. Watching Markham and Bavuma bat when they put on best part of 150, if not more, that must have been genuinely up there as the most enjoyable international cricket experiences you'd have seen.
Yeah, I think I speak. Well, you speak for everyone. Everyone who was there was aware that something momentous was happening, and everyone watching around the world was feeling the same thing. It had real resonance over and above that cricket match that week. Everybody knew what was at stake. That wasn't just a partnership for South African cricket and South African sport, and in some respects for the long process from the early 90s to now in the story of South African sport and South African life. But it was also the story of where Test cricket is. It felt like a referendum almost on Test cricket this week. And if it is in any way seen like that, then it's passed emphatically. And it had that sense of real consequence on a number of different levels, which made it sport from the highest bracket, really.
Moving on from the WTC final, if you want to hear our instant reaction to that.
I thought you'd ask me some more questions. I've got a load more to say.
Go on.
What question do you want us to ask you, Phil?
I just thought we'd have a chat. I didn't realise it was just
well, we did a whole podcast on this when you were
Yeah,
away.
I know. But you told me in the build-up here that you'd want me to get stuck into it.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You've blown the sails out off me now.
I mean, okay. I want to hear you talk about Bavuma because I know he's one of your favourites, the cover drive.
I feel all self-conscious now. I can't do it now.
It's just two people interviewing one person about a match that happened 5 days ago. It's fine.
I was at Cape Town in whenever it was, the Stokes game, the 2016 game. I was at Cape Town for that game, and I remember he was on the front cover of the newspapers on the morning of day 5 after he'd made that 100, and it felt seismic at the time. As a Langer Township boy who'd been identified as a young kid and able then to make that statement on his home ground, but on a ground with all kinds of convoluted and muddy history as well. And it felt immense at the time. But even then, I remember thinking that there was qualifications in the way that he was described even back then, that he was a beneficiary, if that can even be termed, of the quota system. And I think he's had to fight against that perception of his limitations as a cricketer ever since. And I think partly it's an aesthetic thing. I think if you're 5'5" and you don't shout the odds in the modern game, then you can get pigeonholed. But he's a colossus. He's a colossus hiding in plain sight. And when you think where he's come from to get to this point and to own the politics and own the symbolism of what he represents, and to do it with a bit of swagger, knowing what's at stake. It's that 66. I don't know how he was able to pick the bat up, let alone get in behind Cummins when he's on one. That 66, all right, it's rightly in the slipstream of a classic 100 by our boy Dan's man Markram over there, and 100 as pure 100 as you're ever going to see. Markram. But that 66 is a totemic knock, really, considering what was on his shoulders. And to do everything with that degree of dignity, articulacy, to never shy away from what this represented and how it will resonate through South African life, and to get the job done. On a sporting level, it's astonishing, but on a societal level, it's even more so. So I wasn't at Lord's on the final day, but I was watching it with my wife and a mate of ours, who was like a former housemate of ours, who'd just come over for the day, and he's not into his cricket, and my wife will take it or leave it, and leave it more often than take it. But they were both watching it and properly invested in it, because the narrative was irresistible over and above the simple sporting story behind it. So it was really, really moving. But it also causes necessarily significant reverberations. Tectonic plates are shifting for the Test game. They have to, because this has crystallised all of the great things that are happening in spite of the system, in spite of the structure as it stands. And it blows out of the water any notion that we can be comfortable with a status quo that is increasingly entrenching one group over there to in the shadow of the largesse of another group over there. It was a victory for South Africa. It was a victory for the individuals, a victory for their sporting culture, for sure. But it was a victory for Test cricket as well.
The celebrations were pretty cool.
That photo, I asked about this. That photo, is it around? Is it available?
I've not seen it in pure photo form
Right,
anyway.
so we've got to find it. It's amazing. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It is that they do the formal one on Saturday afternoon or Sunday or whatever. Everyone in their blazers and so on, all lined up, straight backed and so on. We've won the mace, and then they do the post watershed one where they've all got their shades on. They're all leaning back. Bavuma is cool as fuck, beyond words, and he's just sitting there. The mace is as big as him, and he's just the Don completely. And they get it. There's a lot of personality in that team. It's only really come through in the last couple of years, and the stories become more and more propulsive and more irresistible with it. But they're a good bunch of characters, a very, very likeable cricket team, and it was a result that rings out, hopefully for a number of years now. You know, there's a bittersweet element that they're not playing home Test matches until August 2026, and I know there are reasons for that aren't simply there's no money, as you were explaining to me coming here, that they're rebuilding and reforming. They're renovating the stadia with a view to the World Cup in 2027. So there is a reason for it, nonetheless. With the wit of man, they could have got some Test matches in. So there's an element of bittersweetness, perhaps, to the win. But all it really does, or what it should be doing, is crystallizing and focusing people's minds, because when it's good, it's as good as that.
The even better bit of social content is they're mapping out the scene from Pulp Fiction with the mace in the case. So Aidan Markram for me. Yeah,
what?
It's incredible. I'll show it you after the show. It's great.
I think all the post-match interviews as well with Maharaj, with Graham Smith.
In tears, right?
In tears, yeah. But all of them, so many of them, Ashwell Prince leading all the singing in the dressing room as well. It was really cool. Really, really cool. Anyway, there's another Test match starting tomorrow. England versus India at Headingley. We have a team, Ben. Pope at 3, an attack of Wokes, Tongue, Carse, and Bashir. Pope gets the call.
Stokes. That's important.
No, there are 5 other guys in the team as well.
No, I know. But he's critically important to that because it sounds sort of threadbare, doesn't it, when you say it out loud?
That is true.
That's all I'm getting at, mate.
We'll get to the bowlers in a bit.
There's 11 players in the team, right?
Yeah. For the moment, at least. Yeah. They've gone Pope at 3 over Jacob Bethel. I suppose England held their cards quite close to their chest. Ollie Pope's been the vice-captain for a long time, yet they did not at any point until they announced the team give any sort of public backing to Pope in that he was actually going to retain that spot. He's got the spot at 3. What do you make of that call?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of strangely sort of almost old-fashioned from England, I think, and maybe it reflects the importance of the time of the 10 tests that are coming up, and the importance of actually winning now, which they haven't really talked about.
There's no room for silly buggers anymore.
Exactly,
this is serious stuff now.
Yeah, so it's the totally logical move from like a traditional selection point of view. You stick to the guys who are in the team. If they haven't done a reason to drop them, you don't do that. You look at obviously the records on paper. Bethel still without a professional 100. Pope obviously 100 in the last game. 8 Test 100s in total. Then you suggest could Bethel open because maybe Crawley's the one who could slip out in that case. And actually, like they could have done all those things, but also this way they can still make that decision later in the series. It's a lot harder actually, I think, to pick Bethel and then to go back on it than it is to pick these guys now. And then if after a couple of tests they're 1-0 down and one of them's not got 50, it's like, well, okay, now that decision's sort of been made for us. So in a way, it's sort of it's the cautious move. It's a slightly un-England move, but also like I can totally see the logic in it. And also they might have just looked at it and thought, who are the guys like as good as Bethel is? Who do you think is more likely to make runs in tests right now? Like it's fair enough to think it could be Pope and Crawley. They've both done things in Test cricket that could make you think that Pope's a very talented player. Crawley had that brilliant 10 Test stretch against Australia. It's not as if like Bethel's case is so compelling as much as when you watch him play, you can lead yourself to think, how could they ever not pick this guy? Like the other two have reasons why you would want to pick them as well. So yeah, I mean, I personally, and it's much easier to do when you want the feeling of the new from the outside, would have gone Bethel over Crawley, but totally get why they've done it. And I think it does, as Phil said, speak to the importance of what's coming up.
Phil, for the first time under Stokes and McCullum, there feels like there will be real internal pressure on players in the team, because how can there not be when there wasn't any public backing until this point for two guys who've played pretty much every test but they have played pretty much every test match when fit under Stokes and McCullum. That's a different dynamic for this team, because normally they are fully behind the guys they pick until they don't. Whereas this time, actually, we know there must be some question marks over them because they didn't outwardly back them when they could have done.
Yeah, it is a bit of a break from the norm. They're normally very upfront. But by the same token, we don't know what's being discussed behind closed doors. And you asked me earlier when we were coming over here, when do you think England had made the decision on the number 3 spot? And my feeling is that they made it quite a while ago. I don't know if the dial shifted much with the Zimbabwe game. I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd decided before that anyway, really. In the end, Ollie Pope deserves to continue trying to crack Test match cricket at number 3. But by any reasonable, logical measure, he deserves that opportunity. He's not really yet had a full run in a home summer against the big boys, against the really big boys, and so I think it's entirely fair and reasonable that it would be him. There is, as Ben says, a natural, tantalising tempter to have thrown in Bethel. A personal view, and I would have selected Pope. I think if Bethel had been home before the Zimbabwe test, I think it would have been a slightly more difficult decision. But he wasn't, and that's fine. That is what it is. So I would have lent towards Pope, personally, for the number 3 slot. And I think it's fair that they have done that. I'd also add, though, I don't think it massively matters too much, right? There is a natural impatience because we're sports fans and because we've got well carried away with this kid. There's a natural temptation to want to see how he goes against Bumrah on Friday morning because it's irresistible, that narrative. But it's fine if it's not going to happen just yet. He's 21. He's going to play, as long as Test match cricket is available to him, he's going to play the lot from probably midsummer onwards, or certainly by the end of the year, he's going to have played another Test match. And look, if he doesn't play another Test match, by the way, between now and the end of Sydney, if that is indeed the 5th Test, then it means that England's selection and their top 7 have gone really, really well. So it's a good position for them to be in. It's not a win-win, but they as you say, they now have a really, really powerful option who can be versatile as well. You feel like he could bat from any position from 1 to 7. And he's Test match ready. If our eyes are telling us anything, he's Test match ready. That's a really strong position for them to be in. So I don't think it's that big a shame, really, that he's not playing in this Test match. All it does is just delay the gratification of seeing him come up against the best, which is going to happen before too long. For Pope, I'm pleased for him. I think he deserves it. For Crawley, I have a a deeply complex and love-hate relationship with him, but I tend to fall down on the side of the good things that he does. And again, if you're looking at it in isolation, the next 10 Test matches, he absolutely deserves to be playing against these two teams because he's done it so well before.
Just on Pope, I think it's always easy to forget how good his record is at 3. And I know that, completely fair point, he only played 1.5 Test matches against Australia in 2023. He didn't have a great overall series against India in 2024, but he did score one of England's greatest ever away.
I was talking about in home summers.
Absolutely. But his overall record at 3, he's got 700s from 28 Test matches, averaging 43. Only Hammond, Barrington and Gower have more hundreds at 3 for England than Ollie Pope. He's got many hundreds at 3 as Jonathan Trott. He's got more hundreds at 3 than Butch, for example. I think he deserves to start a series against a top team at home.
Yeah, and your point on the messaging is an interesting one. I guess the one thing is this decision is the one that helps to reinforce that in some ways. It would have maybe had other players looking over their shoulder if you do end up dropping a guy like Pope, who has done, ostensibly pretty well at number 3, pretty well to very well. The other thing is as well is that like that messaging, they've been like, it's okay for players to feel a bit of pressure at times, I think, to maybe it could even focus the mind to think like, no, this thing really matters. Now is the time where you kind of have to make it count. Like, obviously there is merit, obviously, as there was back in 2022 in really freeing people up and saying and backing them as you're our guys. But you kind of need the balance, I think, to say like, it's not as if before England came in like that, no one had ever made 100, no one had ever made 100 while feeling they were playing for their place. Like that can happen. Even that can actually free you up in some ways. We feel like it's now whenever you've got no chance to do it, can just give you that extra little bit of sort of focus and kind of concentration in the mind. So obviously, and it also, I think there's a way to still make Pope, say, feel hugely confident in his own ability and how much you rate him, even while not backing him to play every test from now until the end of next year. And that is the balance that you have to find. But that's something that I think Stokes in particular is very good at. He's very good at sincerely telling people how good he thinks they are, and in them feeling that and then sort of lifting as a result of it.
Yeah, and also I guess Stokes' reaction to the misunderstanding, let's call it, around the Zimbabwe test about Bethel coming back into the squad or team. And for what it's worth, I think he was on pretty sure ground there because he's far too canny to have said that Bethel would be coming back into the 11 on the eve of a game where he's not playing. Stokes isn't that bloke. He's too clever. I reckon he would have had a word with Pope that week and said, look, you start that next, you start against India. Don't worry about it. You're our number 3. You've done well for me. You're a versatile cricketer who's helped us out when we've been in a bit of a pickle here and there. As you say a lot, he batted fine in New Zealand.
He was as
albeit
fun,
down the order, of course.
As fun as Bethel was, Pope was England's second most important player that tour, not Bethel.
So to put a line through him because of the burble around this kid, that would have been, I wasn't expecting to see it. Really.
Yeah. Overall, Ben, how do you see it? Because there are 2 massive unknowns this series. One, India's batting without Rohit and Kohli. Sure, Rahul, Jadeja, they've toured before, but it's a pretty inexperienced Indian top order, whoever they pick. And then 2, the English bowling attack is as inexperienced as it's been. I was actually trying to think when the last time it was this inexperienced. You're going back, I think, probably to the early 90s when England would have fielded an attack this inexperienced in a series this big.
That's a good question. Now I'm going to be thinking.
How do you think those 2 unknowns are balanced? Can you see, if you look at history, India have only won twice in England before. History tells you England should start this series as favourites, but those are 2 huge unknowns that could sway things either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the thing. Like, I almost don't want to sit here and say it's going to go one way or the other because there are so many. Like, I think India's batting is almost, I think, more unknown. I think England's bowling. Firstly, you've got Wokes back in there, who is, a champion in home conditions, and there is a lot of stuff that he's done that suggests that he's going to go pretty well this series. He's hit the ground running both for Warwickshire and for the Lions, which is not something he's always done when he's come back after a period.
He was amazing, by the way, in that Lions game. I watched a lot of that. That was peak Wokes, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So that is one thing that England will be pretty confident about. The other guys, they're inexperienced, but I think from what we've seen so far, I think there's been a bit of up and down, but I think you can be reasonably confident there'll be like a certain level of output there. The Indian batting, I mean, so you mentioned even those bankers in Kerr Hall and Jadeja. So Kerr Hall, he could finally, it could all click because obviously he's got the technique. He's made 100 here before, but he's also 33, averages 34 in England, 34 overall. Like he's very up and down. He has this habit of starting series well and then tailing off. Jaiswal, if you want me to make predictions, I think he'll have a good series, but this is also a guy who, you know, this could be, you know, lots of great overseas batters. Their first tour of England doesn't go as they'd hope, and then it clicks further down the line. That could be what happens, or it could not be what happens. You know, you've got Gill, who, you know, obviously looks $1 million all the time, is now the captain, but is yet to make 100 outside Asia. Again, that could happen. He could have 200s, and then we're talking about, you know, one of the greatest players, you know, in the world, or it could be that he still needs a bit more time to crack it with the extra burden of captaincy. Number 3, so that looks like he'll be their openers, and then number 4. Number 3, it seems like might be Karen Nair, who, you know, is on this, cresting this wave, but this will be, you know, by far the biggest challenge he's faced in this kind of next phase of his career. Pant is yet to hit his pre-accident heights, but again, you know, like if that does kind of click back together, he had a disappointing IPL, but if that kind of refocuses him and he becomes that player again, then that is, you know, that is a guy who can win you test matches by himself with the bats. So that is the biggest unknown for me.
Has he played a test since he's come?
Yeah, he has, and he's done sort of okay. Like he's I think he's still definitely worth his place in the team. There's a bit of competition from Dhruv Jurel, who started decently against England, but he made 100 against Bangladesh, I think, and maybe a 90 odd against New Zealand. So Pant will play at 5. Jadeja at 6. Again, he's that age where, you know, it's possible that he might sort of slide off, but also he could play those key crucial innings he has made a habit of away from home. And then it's actually more into when you get further down in sort of the lower middle order. Looks like it'll be Nitish Kumar Reddy at number 7 and then Shardul Thakur at number 8. So you've got these
playing
two.
them both.
That I think that's that. It's hard to know exactly. It's weirdly a lot of bowling also feels like not as much.
That's what
bowling.
I mean in terms of there's a lot of bowlers.
Yes,
but potentially not that many frontline bowlers.
Yeah, so it might be that they just play the one, but equally like that's the balance. It feels like trying to mesh together all the 11s that they've picked recently when they have been a bit muddled in their thinking that they might go with. And then you've got, I would personally like to them play Kuldeep Yadav, who's like just such a brilliant bowler. I mean, it's going to be hot all week. You know, it's I think he's got the tools to go well, even on conditions that wouldn't traditionally suit a spin bowler. And then you've got, you know, Bumrah, Siraj, and probably Prasidh Krishna as a third bowler. Like that to me looks like a good. Like obviously Bumrah's an all-timer. Siraj is an immense competitor. Obviously he's been a little bit up and down recently, and Krishna I think has got the tools to go well. But yeah, it's the batting that is the big unknown, more an unknown than England's bowling, but that could go in either direction, I think.
I would love to see, as Ben says, I'd love to see Kuldeep in that side as well. And I guess if you do play the extra bowling all-rounder, then there's more chance that he gets the nod. What he's up against, Kuldeep Yadav, for all his obvious brilliance and his brilliant record as well, I just looked it up, 13 tests, averages 22. What he's up against, slight snag, the whole history of Test match cricket. That's what he's up against. Because you can search all you like post-war for a left-arm wrist spinner, but you'll keep searching before you find one that's really nailed it in Test match cricket.
I said this with Butch. I think it's a specific matchup against this England team.
Right.
England come unstuck against high-quality spin quite a lot. If you're to criticise them for one thing, technically in Test cricket, it is their ability against really good spinners, and
also ego.
He's got a good record against England as well.
Yeah, but ego as well. You know, they will want to target that style of bowler on a small ground. Headingley traditionally is a bit of a graveyard for wrist spinners. Warne famously hated it there, but it's going to be hot and dry, and it's in England's makeup to want to go after a bowler like Kuldeep Yadav, and it might just play right into his hands. It would be a really good thing to see him in that 11.
I think Krishna's going to be really interesting because he's a bowler who England would love themselves. So he's tall, rapid. He's a proper wicket taker, but also very expensive. So his first class record is 88 wickets at 21. He's only played 3 Test matches, 8 wickets at 29, economy rate of 4.3, but a strike rate of 41. So he's almost Rabada level in terms of how often he takes wickets, but he goes at 4.3 runs and over. And I think on his day, he could be absolutely brilliant. He's not someone we've seen a lot of in Test cricket before. Phil, I think we almost have like a cultural urge in England to, whenever we're previewing a series or talking about the England team, we just think straight away, who's the batter in the team that's the most vulnerable, and let's talk about them. It's like an instinct thing. But I think looking ahead to these 5 Test matches and maybe even the 5 Test matches after that, the bowlers, I just don't know what to think of the England bowling attack. Chris Woakes aside, who, by the way, he's my pick for player of the series. I think the way he's bowling in that Lions game, his home record, by the way, he averages 30 with the bat, 21 with the ball. That's better record with the ball bowling average than Broad Anderson in home Test matches.
He's very close to the double, isn't he? The 2,000 and 200 double, which I think only 5 players have made before.
I think that if he's fit, he's going to be absolutely vital. We saw him in 2023 come into the Ashes series when no one was talking about him and end it as England's player of the series. It feels similar. No one's really talking about Chris Woakes because we know the story. I think that if he's fit, he could be absolutely pivotal. But Woakes aside, Phil, I don't really know what to think of the England bowling attack.
No, nor do I. There's so many variables in it. There's a lot of potential, but it's unrealised. Bryden Castle's never played a home Test match, still coming back from injury. His red ball record in England is not great, albeit in a different format, if you like. Shoaib Bashir is an enigma. I'm glad that they've backed him. I respect the fact that they've backed him. And Josh Tong, and he's being pronounced Tong more and more, isn't he? So we'll have to go with that, which is a bit of a shame.
It's all gone Josh Tong.
Yeah, lovely, actually. Better than I first thought. Again, he's a mystery. He appeared. Why are you laughing? Calm yourself down.
No, the timing of that was really funny.
He appeared in a 2019 list of the 40 best young cricketers in the world in WCM as a 21-year-old or whatever. And now, 6 years on, we're still none the wiser as to exactly what kind of career he's going to have with England. I go back to the Lord's game 2 years ago in the Ashes when I thought he looked really good. He looked fit, strong, fast, good to the left-handers round the wicket. And he got some purchase from that game. And then soon enough, he was vanishing again. And his story is one of being off the park more than on it over the last few years. He's probably the bowler of the year in county cricket. Started strongly for Notts, and since then England have, cotton-wooled him a bit. Again, loads to offer, loads of intrigue, loads of potential, but it's a raw attack. It's not quite, by the way, Trent Bridge 1993.
And if you want a full episode, a full hour on the 1993 Ashes, go to our Patreon. We did a full hour on that a couple of weeks ago.
With the great Rob Smythe. I'm still smarting that I wasn't asked to join this one because this is my sweet spot. Martin McCaig, Mark Eilert, Peter Such, Andy Caddick. Martin McCaig, Mark Eilert, Peter Such, Andy Caddick, a combined total of four Test caps going into that one. 2 debuts, McCaig and Eilert, and Such and Caddick had played 2 Test matches each. So yeah, it was ever thus that England have had these moments. It looks raw. It looks precarious as well. I think there's going to be a lot of runs in this series. I think there's going to be 1 or 2 wild Test matches. Think England, New Zealand, Trent Bridge 2022. Think that kind of game. I can see that happening a lot. I can see a team putting 5, 70, 80 on the board in the first 5 sessions, 4.5 sessions, and still defending something mad on day 5. I can see that happening more than once. I think it's going to be a runs-heavy series.
I think it'll be a series where superstars announce themselves in a way. I know that someone like Nitish Kumar Reddy has done on the global stage, but to England fans, he's basically a total newbie, even though he's IPL star, brilliant series down under. And
Stokes, by the way, mentioned briefly in passing, he's become critical now to this attack, more and more so, because he's going to be a difference maker more than anyone else, I think.
Ben, how do you see the England attack? I can't work out what to think of how expensive they've been over the last year. Even someone like Gus Atkinson, who's in the top 15 in the world, 50 wickets in no time, averages something like 22. He's going pretty much 4 and over in Test cricket. Biden Cast has been relatively expensive, but also very successful. And it's a point that we've made before, but if you look at who England have played in the last year, they haven't played anyone in the top 4 teams in the world in the current Test rankings. And I wonder, will they still be as incisive with the ball with that economy rate, or against a better batting lineup? Will they still go for lots of runs, but how frequently they strike goes down?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is actually a bit of a departure from England. I think we can think of England as being, they go hell for leather all the time, which means they're going for loads of runs and they're scoring runs really quickly. But actually, in the first 2 years under McCullum, that wasn't always the case, and partly that's a personnel thing in that when you've got Anderson and Broad in your side and Jack Leach as well compared to Bashir, you are just going to go for less runs. But then they've also chosen bowlers like to replace those guys who offer different things, and control in general isn't one of them. And actually that has been, when you talk about England's massive chases at times, one of the key features of that actually has been those weird third innings where they've kind of put the game on pause. Teams have been like sort of realised they're going nowhere. They're quite far ahead in the game, but not quite out of sight and not quite sure how they should be playing it. And then all of a sudden end up losing a clump of wickets, and England chase something that's big, but not as big as it could have been. So that happened through the New Zealand series. It happened against India last time they were here in 2022. It happened even here against Australia a little bit. Obviously, they didn't go over the line in that case, but it was a similar sort of situation. And it is an attack that can do that less, I guess, albeit I think they'll try to kind of make that happen in a different way with that bouncer strategy. But I think how India play that will be interesting, how the series goes. I guess one guy we didn't talk about so much as then was Cars, and he's really interesting because I just look at him and think that the way he bowls might just not be that suited to England. I think that actually he could just be a better bowler overseas. Well,
because of the lengths he bowls.
Yeah, the lengths he bowls. I wonder if
Mark Wood's the comparison, right? Mark Wood Mark Wood had played Test cricket for England for 6 years, really, until he had like a standout home Test match. And I know that he's had a few in the last couple of years, but it took him a really long time for it to work. So yeah, I can see he doesn't have an amazing first-class record in the county championship. That sometimes happens to quicker bowlers in England on slightly slower pitches.
Yeah, and even the Mark Wood comparison is fair in one point of view, because you can see there's an example of a guy who was good overseas, who wasn't good in England, but to expect Cast to have the summer that Wood had, that relied on Wood being so fast, which is a level of speed that Cast can't get to. That if you're that fast, then it doesn't matter if it's English pitches or any pitches, you're going to be an issue. Whereas if you're just that high 80s, low 90s, and it's kind of, you then end up actually almost
pretty quick.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. But the thing is that and if you're that bit back of a length as Cast, you end up actually taking dismissals out of play in terms of bowled and LBW in England with that seam movement, which Cast doesn't have, I think, quite as much as say an Atkinson or definitely a Wokes.
But he can be a bruiser in that setup, right?
No, for sure. Like I definitely see him. I think it's basically going to be really interesting how he goes. I think it could be that he makes it work, and then. But I think that England also might possibly show a bit of sort of resolve there, maybe when it comes to after the series as well. Whereas if he's had a couple tests, they've rotated, he's not gone great in those, then he's just think like, no, we know what this guy can offer. Like he's a big part of the plans for further down the line, and then we see how he goes in England, kind of thing. So
no, obviously no Atkinson, no Wood, no Archer. Who the talk around it is that he might be available for the second half of the series.
Yeah, so he is supposedly going to play for Sussex against Durham coming up shortly, and if he does that, pulls through that one okay, then he could play one of the second or third test even.
But looking at it from India's perspective, they probably come into the series slightly second favourites. But this first test match with England a bit undercooked, and with certainly their 2 fastest and arguably their 3 fastest bowlers, although Cast would perhaps have something to say about that, unavailable, it feels like now's a pretty good time to be playing England from India's point of view. And that if they can get a foot up in the series, then they've got something to hold on to. So yeah, I think India will be looking forward to this one. The weather's going to be set fair. If they win the toss and they can control the game, they know that if they can set England something 350, 400, then England are going to go for it. And so it could be a humdinger, really could.
They've also had the preparation that England haven't had really. India, they've been here for ages, playing loads of games against themselves and against the Lions. And then I guess the other thing is I wonder if you could almost see 2 series kind of play out, because India have said at the moment that Bumrah, they want to keep him to 3 games basically. He's he bowled lows last year, especially in that Border Gavaskar Trophy. Then had a stress reaction in the back, which I think has made them rethink things, realise how precious this guy is. So you could almost have a England play India with Bumrah in 3 tests and India without Bumrah in 3 tests. And if they lose 2-1 to Bumrah and win 2-0 against no Bumrah, then they win the series.
So speaking to my boy Ravi Shastri,
which you'll get on your feeds tomorrow.
Close personal friend these days. He reckons 4 games. Bumrah's going to play 4 tests. That's what he reckons.
I think so too. I think if you get to the decider and it's 2-2 and Bumrah's, he's come through those okay, I think you probably risk him.
There's one. We're getting to that point where dudes just say blokes' names and that's enough. But we haven't mentioned Harry Brook, I don't think, on the show. I have a feeling, and don't bet kids unless you want to. And I already
definitely not the
have
kids.
Looked at it. I call them kids. I reckon. I have a feeling that Brook's going to have one of those monster summers. Right? He's never had one yet. He's been on the edges, hasn't he, of English summers. And I reckon this is the summer against a top team, but a cricketing culture that he's not yet demonstrated it fully against. He's had an in-out, but more out than in IPL story. I reckon this is the summer that Harry Brook announces himself.
Gun to your head predictions, Ben?
3. I'm going to say 3-1. Actually, I think it's going to be a game that England can't force a result in, but they win it 3-1.
Phil?
I like 3-1 England. I'm going to go for 2-2. I have a feeling in a dry summer that they're just going to punch each other out and there's going to be a draw somewhere.
Cool. I'm going 3-2 England. I agree with you. I think there are going to be some mental finishes. Yeah. Mental finishes. Yeah. Maybe in the first test match with the weather as good as it is. If you look specifically at Headingley, the last test match there was the Ashes test in 23. Quick pitch. Amazing game. I know it wasn't full 5 days, but I think with the bowling attacks for both sides, the massive thing for India was no one could support Bumrah over the winter. It's a completely different series if Bumrah has some support, and that was partly due to the way that Gambia balanced the side. But I think how Siraj and Krishna go, massive part of how the series goes. But I think they'll do all right. Siraj has done okay here in England in the past. I think they have enough interesting seamers who, they haven't done it yet in Test cricket. I think they'll do well. Kuldeep at some point, even if he doesn't start the series, at some point they'll work out he should play. Yeah. He will go well at some point in the series. And Bumrah's the best bowler of all time, in my opinion. So I think they'll win at least 2 Test matches. But history tells you England beat India at home. India have only won here 3 times ever. Even in 2021/2022, when they played the 5th test in 2022, they didn't completely dominate England, and that was England at its weakest point in the last 15, 20 years. Even the really exciting series in 2018 was 4-1 England. I know that wasn't necessarily fully representative of how close it was.
It was a mad summer.
I can see a similar series where it's amazing to watch, but maybe at the end of it, England come out on top.
Yeah, I hear all of that. I think that's all fair. There's a few unknowns in India's top 7 with the bat, but that could be settled emphatically quite quickly, couldn't it? And if their variables start to find form and footing in this series, then it could become an absolute slugfest of 550s and 600s at a mad lick as well. So I can see the odd game where they just punch each other out. And I have a feeling with India's batting lineup that the second half of the summer, when they're settled in, we can see some big monster scores. There's one other thing possibly to add about the pitches. Now, I'm not sure about pitches outside London, but the pitches at Lords and the Oval this year that I've seen a lot of in the flesh, they go to sleep. And this is not
bizarre.
Yeah, and I don't think this is what groundsmen are planning. This is just what's happening. I don't think conditions are going to shift climactically from here on in. Pitches they roll over and die after a couple of days, and there's more life in them initially. So we could see some games here where there's more action in the first half, as we were seeing actually in the game last week at Lords. Got to a point where Australia needed to take 17, 18 wickets in in South Africa's chase in order to get up.
Things weren't carrying.
Things weren't carrying and nothing was happening. And even when you did find the edge, it was just going to ground. We've seen that in red ball cricket a bit at the Oval. We've seen it a lot here at Lords. And if that's replicated around the grounds as well, then we could have some wild crapshoots towards the second half of some of these games.
I think with the weather that we're having at the moment, this week in particular is genuinely hot. And the fact that the cricket we're about to see is not in late summer, but it's later in the summer. I think if you look back at the 2023 Ashes, Edgbaston wasn't far off what you're describing. That was pretty dead by the end of it.
Yeah.
But Headingley was quick. Old Trafford was pretty dead as well.
Old Trafford as well. So
yeah,
Old Trafford's a good model, right? So Australia bat first, get 400. England get 600 and something. Then Australia, okay, England would have worn them down, you'd like to think, because they'd scored so madly quickly. But there are scenarios whereby if you're up in the series, say you're India and you're 2-1 up going into the fourth test, if you win the toss and bat, and India have done this around the world quite happily, they're not wedded to win-lose cricket. Only England have gone that way. You could have a scenario whereby you control the game. And then you are playing on England's, not even their ego, you're playing on their whole creed, their whole philosophy about the game, and then that could potentially be quite explosive towards the end. Just on that thing regarding England's winning and drawing, by the way, I noticed this the other day. Stokes has captained England 33 times. Patrick Cummins has captained Australia 33 times. They've both won 20 games each from their 33. Obviously, Stokes has only overseen one draw, and he probably still hates it that it was a draw. And so that's where the big differentiation between the two is. But it's an interesting aside that they've both captained the same number of games and they have the same win ratio. You can cut that if you like.
No, I think it's a very, very interesting point, Phil. With the England-India series just a day away, it's the perfect time to refresh your summer wardrobe with Charles Tyrwhitt, dedicated to helping men dress. Well, I'm wearing a Tyrwhitt number today.
Wow, it's nice, collarless.
Whether
new style for
you're watching the first test at Headingley, I'm so grateful to our friends at Charles Tyrwhitt for my wardrobe over the last few years.
We all are, because we have to work with you. Slim pickings initially.
Whether you're watching the first test at Headingley at home or on the go, do it in style straight off the bat with Tyrwhitt's range of lightweight linen shirts, versatile polos and merino jumpers for those cooler days. Dressing brand ambassadors Joe Root and Stuart Broad this season. You know it's clothing made to stand the ultimate test, keeping you looking sharp whatever the conditions this summer. Head to charlestyrwhitt.com to shop your summer look now, and for 20% off, use the exclusive code Wisden20 at checkout. Next up, something a little bit different. It's a snippet of my conversation with Gary Kirsten from last week, one of the most successful men in cricket, full stop. More than 100 test matches for South Africa. World Cup winning coach for India, took South Africa to number one in the world as head coach. Recently, Pakistan head coach too. Here he is on the current landscape of international cricket, and also some of the work that he's been doing away from the spotlight over the last 10 years. After Gary, you'll hear from Omar Khan, who is on the board for Bat for a Chance, a charity that works with Gary's own charity. Really interesting and impressive cricket-based charity doing a world of good. Off the field, though, we've seen some high-profile retirements, not only in the last week, but over the last couple of years. Quinton de Kock, a while back, he's still 32. Heinrich Klaassen the other day, he's 33. And it sounds like, from the outside at least, that Cricket South Africa weren't necessarily on the same page as Klaassen, for example. So when Walter was the coach, there was a plan for Klaassen to manage his franchise commitments alongside bilateral cricket through to the 27 World Cup on home soil. But under Conrad, it looks like Conrad wants everyone to be available for every bilateral series. This is not something that's just affecting South Africa. We saw Nicholas Pooran retire at 29 the other day. Trent Boult came away from international cricket potentially a little bit earlier than people expected. Do you think from a board's perspective or a coaching perspective, more can be done to accommodate those players who have all the opportunities available to them?
I think we're talking a lot about our three format players, and my biggest gripe with South African cricket is we've got to play more Test cricket. We cannot only play 4 Test matches a year, 5. I mean, this is traditionally a very strong Test cricket nation with a lot of history and pride in it, and a team that's traditionally done well. And there has to be a way that Test cricket can be more relevant in South Africa. So it's not a surprise when I see players saying, okay, well, they're trying to manage their diary through the year, that they can play a lot of franchise cricket. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if you look at football, it's exactly the same. It's your club's more important than your country in many ways, isn't it? Well, you're certainly playing a lot more club sport or club football. And I think cricket's heading in that direction. So it's a management of a player process, and each guy is case by case, But I think if you can be flexible around it, I think you can get the best out of those players, and they still do represent their country. But I think I'm not sure that you can, argue to a player who knows he's got a limited lifespan as a cricketer, and say to him, you need to make a decision. If international playing for your country is more important, then you need to be available to play for your country. I think it's quite an unfair thing to do to a player now, because especially all format players, because they have an opportunity to make really good money if they do make themselves available in the leagues.
You mentioned South Africa only playing 4 home Test matches a summer. In 25-26, it's none. I know that they sort of catch up the next year. How does that make you feel, South Africa not playing a home Test match?
I'm one of, I think it's 8 players only played 100 Tests for South Africa, and I don't think there's going to be any more, apart from the guys who may be close there now. But I think that's quite sad in many ways, because we need to protect this game, Test cricket, and South Africa plays a massive role in the success of Test cricket, in my view. They're a great Test playing nation, always have been. And if the international cricketing authorities feel that South Africa doesn't play that important a role in Test cricket anymore, and we can't afford to give you games because it's not financially viable, there's got to be a way that we can look to bankroll the game to bring all those Test playing nations into the fold.
So do you think there needs to be a more equitable distribution of funds?
I'm not sure if it's equitable, but I just think that you've got to look at each country. You've got to look at the West Indies and say, what does the West Indies need from the cricket world to make sure that they produce a really strong Test team? What does South Africa need? And what we need is more game time, first of all. But I think there has to be a way that we can take, the world cricket income and make sure that Test cricket is alive and well, and that South Africa don't play 2 Test match series. It's like ridiculous. They've got to be minimum 3 Test match.
I get the sense you don't like 2 Test series. Just for our listeners, could you explain why you dislike the 2 Test series?
Well, I just think it's not a fair reflection of who actually is the better team, and as we know, I mean, we've got a World Test Championship final coming up. People have often asked me, what are the chances that South Africa have? And I said, well, they're the underdogs, but they can also knock 3 or 4 of their best batters out in one morning on a green pitch. And in a one-off game, anything's possible, So it's always nice to have these series where, in the end, a 3 Test match series, the better team's going to come through in those 3 Test matches. So you don't have to have one blowout session and you draw the series.
Yeah. You have worked in several countries, and one argument that some people make is that the next generation of players, aged 28 and below, they don't have that zest for Test cricket that the generation before them had. Is that true? Is that what you've come across?
Certainly not. Every cricketer that I've spoken to, their dream is to play Test cricket for their country. Even someone like David Miller, who's now 35, 36, he would love to have played more Test cricket for his country. So I don't hear that from the players. I get where the players are at now, where they're looking at their careers. If I'm not going to be one of the 11 that's going to play for South Africa in Test match cricket, I've got other choices. Whereas in the past, you could only play 50 over cricket for South Africa or Test cricket. They've got choices. And David Miller's played for 38 teams in his career. They've got choices. So I think it's definitely a different landscape for the young player now.
Do you think cricket lacks a bit of leadership that's coherent, basically? Because when you hear a lot of people like yourself or people even who have jobs in cricket administration, they tend to say a similar thing, but even someone like Rob Key, for example, who's the managing director of England Cricket, they aren't that clear necessarily on what actually needs to be done to achieve a world in which Test cricket has more prominence than it currently does now, to ensure that countries like South Africa and West Indies are playing more than 2 Test series.
You're right. I mean, I don't know what the answers are. I'd love my opinion to be asked and just say, what do you think? You know, I'm a 100 Test match veteran. You know, and this game's dear to me. And I do think it's, you know, I don't know who's representing the ex-players who value Test cricket. But some, you know, and maybe they need a voice, and I don't know if they do have a voice. I'm not sure, and I understand there are lots of different dynamics that exist. But the one thing that is clear to me is that West Indies, South Africa, New Zealand, Pakistan have got to be playing 10 Test matches a year.
Everyone will be aware of your work as a player and a coach, but maybe not so much about Catch Trust.
Yeah, I mean, I finished with South Africa in 2013 and I was headed into the leagues. My kids were young, so I didn't want to, like a lot of coaches, I didn't want to be on the road all the time. So it kind of suited me to go into the leagues. But then I had some more free time, you know, and I just thought, you know, I wouldn't be doing myself a service if I didn't look at the game that's given me so much. In all sectors of our society. It's a national sport in South Africa. So I want to go look at our summer national sport and go see what it's like in one of our poorest neighborhoods, which is a township in Khayelitsha. It's a massive township in Cape Town. And I went down there and I managed to connect with the headmaster of one of the schools, doing a great job at the school. And I said, would you take me around just to go? I just want to go look at the sports facilities in the schools in your area. There are 50 schools in Khayelitsha, 1,000 kids in each school. So that's 50,000 kids. There wasn't one sporting facility, nothing. So I just said, we've got to do something with cricket here, man. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, they had lots of open fields, but not in great condition. I mean, not cricket fields at all, just sand and everything. I said, I'd love to just build 2 concrete nets at your school. So he said, yeah, I'll go for it. So we built the concrete nets. I phoned up a guy, said, do you want to come coach? Came and coached there, and we started the program on the back of 2 concrete cricket nets. We then decided, hold on, let's go to 5 other schools. We went to 5 other schools, and we placed coaches there. Suddenly, the kids started to play cricket, which is what we wanted. And then we thought, well, I always said there are 4 pillars to take talent and turn it into opportunity. So I had when I was a small kid, I had opportunity in cricket. The reason why I had opportunity is because I went to a cricket school. I came from a cricket family. I had access to anything that I wanted out the game. And those 4 pillars for me, I said, if I could put those 4 pillars into the poorest neighborhood in Cape Town, would we be able to take the talent that exists here and turn it into real opportunity for them? And those 4 pillars were they need cricket equipment, which Bat for a Chance here in the UK has been an amazing partner for us. We needed to produce cricket fields, they needed to be able to practice and play, and we needed good coaching, and then we needed matches for them to play. So those are the 4 pillars, and if we could get those all in place. So we built an artificial cricket field, we built an indoor centre, we put coaches there, they play matches. And we've now, out of the 400 kids on our program between the girls and the boys, we've got 17 of them that are playing in representative cricket in Cape Town.
So the aim of it is not just to introduce cricket to people who've not played before, but also to actually get them potential and a pathway to playing the game professionally.
Yes, absolutely. And not all of them will play professionally, but to have that journey of experiencing the game of cricket, you know, when they finish school at 2:00 in the afternoon, and instead of walking home in the streets of the townships, they're actually coming to be part of our program. And the girls are fantastic. We've got over 100 girls on the program now, and they every week they're involved in some women's health program or something in education. So, you know, it's fantastic to see it happening. You know?
You almost sound evangelical about cricket. It's amazing hearing that you still find so much joy in the game and believe that people need to experience it.
It's given me so much. You know, I started playing when I was 4 years old in the garden, and I'm 57 now. And you know, for 37 years, I've made a living out the game. So it's given me a lot. Yeah. I owe a lot back for what it's given me. Yeah.
And you've done a lot in the game. How would you describe the last few years with the Catch Trust in terms of what you've done as a player, as a coach?
Yeah, it's a very small thing that we've done, to be honest with you. And people have often said to me, "Well, it's such a big problem." And I said, "Well, we've got to do something." You know, so our sphere of influence is small. You know, we got 400 boys and girls on our program, but I think what we've been able to create is the idea that a young talented kid out of the townships doesn't necessarily have to get a scholarship to an elite school in Cape Town to make it. We can put a high performance center in the middle of the townships, and that's I think that was the initial vision 10 years ago. And 10 years down the line, a lot of spend and a lot of contributions from people that looked at the program and said, we want to contribute. 10 years down the line, we produced that. So, I mean, that's very fulfilling.
So something different for the next bit of the show. We're joined by Omar Khan, who is the chairman of Bat for a Chance. Omar, for some listeners who don't know what Bat for a Chance is, talk us through it.
Bat for a Chance is an amazing charity that was established by Will Gaffney at a very, very tender age. Will was 14 going on 15, as you do, and had a bit of an epiphany when he was on a tour in Sri Lanka. He saw and experienced a lot of children in Sri Lanka with substandard bats, bad gloves, some of them not wearing any footwear. So he came home to his mother and father and said, "Mum and Dad, I want to start a cricket charity," as you do.
That's amazing. I mean, for a 14-year-old to do that is extraordinary. What's he like to work with before we get onto what the charity does day to day?
So I've never reported into I've been chairman for 3 years. So Will's been in situ as CEO of the charity for about a year now. So I've never reported into a 19-year-old going on 20-year-old, but he's an unbelievable lad who has literally created this vision. And I've been so delighted to be part of the journey, really.
So talk us through what the charity does on a day-to-day basis. It's essentially providing cricket equipment for people who can't afford it.
Yeah, so Bat for a Chance has been characterised by giving away kit to disadvantaged communities in this country and all over the world. So in the space of the last 2 years, we've been in so many countries. It's been unbelievable, from Rwanda to the Lebanon to basically dropping kit into Bulgaria, where there have been Afghan communities through the UN. In particular, we had a project with the United Nations last year, which was absolutely fabulous for us. So the delivery of kit into the Temba Bavuma Foundation, into the Catch Trust with Gary Kirsten, with the Foundation of Goodness, Sri Lanka's amazing charity that was set up by Kushal Gunasekera when the tsunami hit Sri Lanka. And we've had incredible support from Kumar Sangakkara. So that's where the charity has been. But in the last year or so, I suppose we've been a victim of our own success. We've secured some funding, which has enabled us to effectively scale. And as of now, we're actually supporting a number of projects around the world. So we've got projects that are being co-funded by us or in partnership with entities in Barbados, in South Africa, and Sri Lanka, where it all started.
How prohibitive do you find the cost of cricket equipment, not just globally, but also in the UK, and that when you deliver the kit, you are expanding the number of people who are literally playing the game?
I mean, that's a good point. Cricket in general is a very, very expensive game. If you want to buy a cricket bat these days, you're looking at around £500 in some cases. To buy a pair of cricket shoes, you're looking at £100. The price of entry is extremely high. And what we've basically done in the last year or so is we've worked with a lot of the major manufacturers. So brands like Missouri, Moonwalker, Grey Nichols are basically seeding us kit, which we can then send to deserving causes around the world or into this country. Because when you basically do a kit drop, you want the kid to basically receive something like he or she is getting a Christmas present. So that's what we've tried to stimulate, which has been absolutely amazing.
And more than just providing kit, that you guys want to engineer social change as well.
So that's been the development of the charity in the last 12 months or so. With the Rajasthan Royals, for example, we've sold our naming rights to the club in Barbados, to the Barbados Royals. So they are co-funding our Caribbean girls cricket club, the first ever girls cricket club that was set up. And we have Roland Butcher, the first batsman to play for England, in situ as our country director. And the ambassadors that we have alongside that project have included Hayley Matthews, captain of the West Indies, amazing, and Chris Jordan as well, who's been our first ever global ambassador.
It's amazing. Well, if you were to throw it forward 5 years, what would you say, not just the challenges, but what are the aspirations for the charity?
I think we still feel like we're a veritable startup. So the funding is enabling us to actually fund deserving projects. So our project with Gary Kirsten and the Catch Trust in South Africa is a really, really powerful project that will empower coaches. And has been received extremely well, and we're here today on the eve of the World Test Championship, and to have Gary Kirsten here for an event that we're running today is absolutely brilliant. So I think in a few years' time, where would we like to be? We want to turn over as much money as possible as a charity, and that's what, if you're given an opportunity to do that, then all that's going to mean is the more money that you're effectively turning over. Good charities are very, very good at actually giving money to more deserving causes. So what comes in goes out, and that's where we'd like to be, really.
So if someone's listening to this and they like what they hear, want to support what you guys do, where should they go?
Well, they can go to our website. It's really, really simple to go to www.batforachance.org, and you can donate there quite simply. We have a wonderful year ahead of us. We've got our first ever fundraiser that's taking place at the Oval later this year, and we are working with our ambassadors throughout this summer, really. I mean, we're very, very fortunate in that we've got Chris Jordan, we've got Hayley Matthews, we've got Roland Butcher, and literally a couple of weeks ago we secured Jofra Archer as our first global ambassador. So, can we do any better than that?
That's very cool, and you guys are doing a lot of good stuff, so best of luck in the future. Cheers for your time, Omar.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Yas. Cheers.
Awesome. Fancy sipping on a pub quality draft pint whilst watching the India-England series at home? Well, you now can with Perfect Draft. So our YouTube viewers would have seen this behind us all show. And it's essentially a mechanism through which you can pour your own pints at home. We have our own one here. It's perfect for warm days like this. Here is one that we poured earlier.
Brilliant. Thank you, sir.
Phil has his own beer. How's that going down?
Beautiful.
Nice and cold, isn't it?
Tastes a bit like Stella Artois beer.
Well, it is a Stella Artois beer, so that'll be why.
I'm more of a gin fella myself, so beer's not really my drink. But that's.
But if it is your drink,
that's tasty as all hell.
If it is your drink, Perfect Draft are your friends. Listeners can get an exclusive £20 off machines with the code Wisden20. So you can pour pints like a pro at home in no time with over 40 different brands to choose from, all chilled to the perfect temperature for 30 days. It is the perfect accompaniment to a packed summer of cricket.
It's a really good machine. It's got like an app where you can control all these things, and like,
oh, shut up!
There is nothing worse than like than a warm can, or even like a not quite cold enough can.
There are worse things.
Okay, there are some worse things, but like, there's nothing better, I think, than a lager that is like crisp and fresh and cold. On like, I mean, I'm a beer philistine, I guess you could call me, but I know that I really like that, and like that can do it. And like, actually, if you think about the difference between that versus like something that doesn't quite hit the spot on like a hot day, go for that, I reckon.
Ben, Phil had an amazing week because of the Bavuma Markram partnership. But you've had an amazing week as well because they've changed one of the laws.
yeah, they have done. But Phil will be more happy about this than I am because he was vehemently angry about this at the time. You remember the Michael Nisa catch New Year's Day a few years ago in the BBL, Phil? It seems to have slipped your mind. So if I can refresh you on that catch.
Sorry, New Year's Day. I don't think Phil's watching the BBL.
But he would,
The BBL was watching me at that point.
he would have doom scrolled through it, I think. So Michael Nisa takes a catch, throws it up to himself, goes outside the rope. He then sort of jumps while he's outside the rope, palms it up, lands back outside the rope. He's miles outside the field of play at this point, then comes back in and takes it. Completely legal within the laws of the game, but people felt it just kind of looked wrong. That shouldn't be legal within, how cricket's laws should be written. And they've changed it. They said basically you can kind of leave the field of play once and come back in, but you can't keep doing it again and again. And that goes for relay catches as well. I'm not going to get into all the minutiae of the laws. And I do think there are ways that this might be slightly, I can see this basically being slightly wrongly interpreted at some points, but it's something that people are generally happy about and, clears up something that was clear in the laws, but is now clear in a different way. And that's fine by me.
You don't get that on the overlap, do you?
And also, Ben, not one, not two. There were 3 super overs up in Scotland this week.
Oh, no, I saw about this. The Nepal game.
Yeah, Nepal Netherlands up playing a tri-series in Scotland. And not just there were 3 super overs, but 3 astonishing finishes in each of the main game than the first 2 super overs. So the first, in the main game, Nepal hit 30 off the last 2 to tie it. First super over, Nepal hit 19. Netherlands goes 6-4 off the last 2 balls of the over to then tie it again. And the second super over, Netherlands hit 17. And then Nepal hit a last ball 6 to tie it again. And the third super over, complete blowout. Nepal 0 for 2.
Oh.
Netherlands hit a first ball 6. But this is, if you want good cricket, watch that tri-series. They played an ODI tri-series in which Scotland defended 323 by 2 runs. Netherlands chased 370. It's been great cricket, and this is kind of the lifeblood of the international game. So get watching it if you can.
Cool. That is everything for today's show, I think, and I hope. Yep, that is everything for today's show. Cheers, Phil. Cheers, Ben. Discover the future of electric vehicles at an exclusive event at a Kia dealership near you. Be among the first to experience 2 new vehicles joining the existing Kia electric range, the sporty Kia EV4 and the spacious SUV, the new Kia EV5. 2 of the most anticipated launches of the year. Explore cutting-edge design, talk to EV experts, and discover what driving electric really means. Claim your space at an event close to you through the link in the description.